Hi, Imani. How are you?
Hi, Sereena. How are you?
I'm all right,
Wow,
sir.
wow, wow. I'm so honoured and happy to have you on the show.
Oh,
And
thank you.
I am really, really looking forward to talking about all the wonderful things that you're doing. Because,
Okay.
you have so many hats. You are a filmmaker, a singer, a model, an actor, and you're also a CEO of a company with all the things that you
Mm-hmm.
do. So, what I'd like you to do is just introduce the listening audience, to your background and just the wonderful person that you are.
Oh, thank you. So, hi, everyone. My name's Sereena Noor, aka Goddèss. That's my artist name. That's the name that I go by as an artist. I have just released my new single, Cosmic Androgyny, and I run a CEO and a business. And I do a lot of work with women around domestic abuse awareness and things like that. I'm looking forward to Imani asking me the relevant questions to, in alignment with some of the things that you guys are thinking. So, yeah, I'm just excited to have this wonderful conversation and give you more insight into the things that I do, which I really, really enjoy.
Wonderful. So, the first thing I want to ask you about is your filmmaking. How did you get into it? And, what's the ethos behind your filmmaking, things that you do?
Wow, the thing is, I do so many different things. It's funny because growing up, you hear, and also when you go to business meetings and things like that, you hear people say things like, oh, you need to find one thing to do and stick to that. Why are you always swapping and changing it? However, that's something that I've embraced. Now I class myself as a creative. Depending on what I realize that with me, depending on what I'm going through at the time, I use my creative ambitions to express energy through those things. So, for example, just to bring it back to my documentary, I created that documentary about 2 years ago now, actually, and I was going through a very hard time in my life. I just found out that my father wasn't my father. Um, yes, and I mean, it it really pulled me into depression. And considering I at the time was doing a lot around mindfulness and well-being, and I really had to harness what I teach to keep myself up.
Mm.
Anyway, I decided that I was going to leave Birmingham because I'm from Birmingham, and I left Birmingham for a year and a half and went to live in London to give myself a break. During that time, I also went to stay with my guru for 6 weeks in India because I spend a lot of time doing yoga and meditation and those things alike, so that I can build up my experience to therefore translate that and share those experiences and techniques with my clients. Um, when I got back from India, I just kind of rested. I just went in a rest state. I was like, I'm not doing no more coaching. I'm not doing no more workshops and events. I just closed it all down, and my business was going really, really well at the time. And what I found is that I wasn't able to be personable with people. So I still had the clients coming in, but I literally had to make a positive decision to say no because I just couldn't be personable with anyone. It was about me at that point. If you get what I mean, it was
Yeah,
like,
of
oh my God,
course.
I am
Yes.
going through something right now and I need support. I did not have the energy at all to share with anyone. I mean, it broke down my family network in terms of I just wasn't considered. My feelings and how it made me feel. It all the attention went on my mum, which was quite interesting. Whereas for me, I was trying to spread it out to the attention to everyone because it was life changing for everyone. My sisters,
Yes, I can imagine.
my kids, and whoever, and blah blah blah. However, it turned out that I was getting attacked for that, and so I went to India for 6 weeks, and then moved out of Birmingham for a bit because I just needed some space from the whole thing. Anyway, I started having some therapy for myself, so I could talk and explore how I felt about it, etc., etc. And I come across this opportunity to work with a company called On Road Media, and that's when I started doing media engagements around domestic abuse and things like that. And it's interesting that I had that opportunity because I didn't actually see myself at the time as somebody who was suffering a level of domestic abuse. Now, being around those women in setting made me realise, actually, I was suffering a high level of emotional abuse.
Yeah.
Because now you've got the categories of financial abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse, and physical abuse. Now, society really very much pins up physical abuse. I'm not saying that it's not damaging and not equally as challenging as the rest, but the rest are as equally as challenging as physical abuse. Which therefore led me to realising that, hold on a minute, how many people do I know that suffer a high level of emotional abuse from the perspective that they are abused to stay silent about the things that they've been through?
Yes.
Where they're encouraged not to speak about the things that they have been through in order to, not highlight other people's things that they've been through or their family's things that they've been through, or so that other people don't have to deal with that, support them and comfort them. Going through that channel, I started to open up about my sexual assault that I went through when I was 14, and just other forms of abuse that I went through with my mum. I was kicked out of the house. By the time I was 14, I was being kicked out of the house all the time. By the time I was 17, by 18, I got my own place and went on my own journey to living. Now, this one day, I was sitting down speaking to a journalist, and she said to me, well, what about you, Sereena? And I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, because when we have the meetings and stuff, you don't really talk about you. And I was like, well, I don't know. And it got me thinking. I was like, yeah, what about me? How come I'm not talking about my abuse? How come I'm not talking about my assault? How come I'm not talking about all these things where the rest of the women, they had conviction, their perpetrators had been convicted, whereas I was still talking about it in my immediate network at that time. And I remember turning to her and saying, well, black women don't report these things. I know some do, but from my knowledge, I've spoken to a lot of black women who have been sexually assaulted and suffer financial abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, and we just don't necessarily report. It's something that we kind of support each other through. And she looked at me and she was like, really? And she went, why is that? Why do you think that black women don't report? And I was like, in my head, I was like, It was like a shocking, never asked question. I was like, I don't know, actually. So she was like, well, I think you should go away and think about that. And I remember writing the thing, because originally she wanted me to be a part of her documentary.
Right.
However, she ended up suggesting to me when I met her on the second invitation that I do a documentary looking at the reasons why women of colour don't seek justice for crimes committed against them.
Yeah, I watched the preview of that, and I was like, wow, that is an interesting question to ask.
Mm.
Yeah, and carry on. Sorry, I didn't mean to pop in there. Just was,
No, it's okay. So then we also had a discussion about justice and what's my perception of justice. And I was like, a perception of justice? I was like, I've never thought about anything like that. And in that moment, I felt so illiterate. I was just like, oh God, I feel really dumb at the moment. Like, I've really never
thought it would cross your mind.
No. And that, again, led me to go away and sit down and think, well, what's my perception of justice? And I remember calling people who I knew who had been in similar situations to me and saying, well, what would you want to happen about what you went through? And they was also very much like, well, it was. I tell you what was happening. What was happening is those women were actually considering the perpetrator.
They were thinking about
the people who it would it would affect,
Yes.
to shut out deciding what their perception of justice is, and in that context. And I just seen a pattern that I was like, hold on, we're all kind of reflecting each other here, and we kind of have this like secret Black women's club of, getting on with our lives, looking after the children, looking like the strong Black woman to society, etc., etc., etc. But then we crumble to each other in silence. I mean, how many times can anybody listening think about who can relate to what I'm saying, has spoken to one of their friends at a point when they're really low, and what they're talking about is the times when they've been through, being attacked.
Yeah,
and it's lasted
emotionally,
for probably
mentally,
like a week.
physically, yeah, all
Yeah,
this,
yeah. And it's lasted, that depression, so to speak, has lasted for a week or two, and you've literally been there prop up when they've put the kids to bed, and then the phones are in, like, they're going through that, and you're supporting them through it, and then it passes, and then they're back to normal, acting strong again, blah, 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 blah. That happens regularly, and we only deal with it when we're triggered, which then I came to this decision that my way of seeking justice was doing the documentary.
Wonderful, yes. I can't wait for that.
I was like, hold on.
Wow.
Oh, no, because I was like, hold on. Asian women go through their thing, but the way that it affects them, the phenomena of it, is completely different. They may fear death even, or their children being taken away from them, whereas that's not something that we would fear as women of colour, and maybe African women, it's the same kind of thing. There's different stigmas around the consequence of reporting. But for us, there's no, like, what's the stigma? Is it as major? Or isn't it? Is the phenomena as major, or is the phenomena not as major? And I found that the phenomena is not as major. However, the weight of that phenomena is not based on, it's based on being ridiculed and not believed. It's more about fearing somebody else's shame and how it's going to affect somebody else.
Wow.
In the family name.
Yeah.
Yes. And also, Dr. Ava, in the documentary, she touched on topics.
Dr. Ava Brown, is it? Yeah.
No, but I can't pronounce her name, It's Dr. Ava Carrie Vedenda Zazenzi. If you'd watch the trailer on YouTube, it's very difficult to pronounce. I feel I should know how to pronounce it, but I can't. Just look on the trailer on YouTube.
Trailer. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you go to Sereena Noor YouTube, you'll see the trailer, and then you'll see our beautiful sister expressing studies which show that Black women actually fear Black men getting locked up because of how much Black men are ridiculed by society. And we kind of have this innate feeling of protecting our men against the system. Therefore, if we was to report, it would go against our traditional, idea of protecting our men.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Oh, yeah. So many people in your field, working in your field, say the same thing. That, Black women are scared because of, what the outcome could be for a Black man being taken into custody.
We've had people who have died in custody, who have been brutally beaten in custody, and we've been helpless in terms of being able to help them and seek justice regarding those things happening. So there's so much within the documentary that is highlighted that's going to be very eye-opening for a lot of people. Purposely, I put women of different colours in there, so there's white women in the documentary as well, which may sound very contradicting. However, the reason why I did that is to show that Black women and white women can have the conversation. And there's a lot of things that we have in common. You know, rape doesn't have a colour. Domestic violence doesn't have a colour.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, and so we can listen to each other and understand each other. Because I think sometimes, you know, growing up in the West, it's very much the hierarchy, very much kind of puts forward that, you know, white people are at the top and they are more favoured, so to speak. And we see less and less, especially on mainstream media, of Black people having normal everyday conversations with white people. Therefore, it creates a divide in terms of, you know, what happens to you don't happen to me, or it may do, but it's still a maybe kind of thing. So with that said, for me, I wanted to bring everyone together. So we're also seeing listening to each other as well, so that we can even also work on diluting that whole angry Black woman image, hyper strong Black woman, you know, and bring that to the table as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear totally what you're saying. You know, you're making it because it is a global concern, because it's all communities, all cultures concern. You're depicting it in your documentary so that people can see it as, you know, and not just see it as a small group or, as you say, oh, you know, there goes those angry Black women again. Yeah, I get that.
And talking about anger, what I found interesting was what I found within myself was that the whole, you know, revelation about my dad, it resurrected anger, past anger about my assault, about the way that I was treated growing up and things like that. So I had all these emotions that I had suppressed and not dealt with that came to the surface. And I was like, how the heck am I going to deal with this? And I didn't have that foresight initially. However, I had to go on that journey because moving out of Birmingham and going to live in London, like, it was just like, what are you doing kind of thing. So I kind of blindly just decided that this is a part of my healing. I don't know how it's going to be a part of my healing, but it is. And you know what? The more I journeyed into doing the documentary, the more liberated I felt. It was like I was expressing the anger without, you know, attacking anyone. You know, I mean, my mum felt attacked, and the findings in terms of the effect that it's going to have on other people she was actually an exemplar of that, because the shame, you know, and the accusations of me being a liar, because of how my sexual assault was dealt with in the past, it did do that, and it came across as though I was being cold, you know, but to me, I was successful at expressing my anger in a way that liberated a lot of people. You know, I've had emails, I've had conversations, I've had phone calls, I've had a lot of people rejoice at the fact that I have highlighted this and put it forward. However, you know, for the family, it wasn't ideal, and I was cold, and I wasn't being fair, and I wasn't considering anybody else, you know, and that's exactly the point that's made. That, you know, and I had to go through that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it is that thing, as you said, you know, this situation triggered things that you've been used to burying and trying to keep up appearances to make everyone happy. And now for you, this is freedom. And this is the thing, isn't it? Sometimes, and this is why, you know, there's that saying, you've got to love yourself first, and you've got to put yourself first so that you can be your full expression of the human being you're meant to be, so that you can carry out your purpose. And now, you know, you found your purpose, and it's helping other people as well. And that is the most important thing. You will find that, you know, in time, you and your mother will have a conversation. We'll be able to have a conversation about this, and she'll realise that you had to do this to free yourself.
Yeah. It's interesting because, also in terms of creativity and bringing it back to the idea that the fact that I created a film, is amazing. That's phenomenal. I didn't think that I could have done something like that and through
I
that
didn't,
anger.
because I knew you since I didn't know you were doing these things. I didn't even know about, what you've just, I'm actually in shock along with, what everyone else is hearing. But, I was so proud of you as a young woman that you've found, your purpose, you found your skills, your talents, and you're sharing it with the world. And, it's brilliant what you're doing.
Thank you.